Hi. As we start a new year, I thought I'd share with you the results of a task that I set myself to doing in 2022. And I haven't really publicly shared this before about what I was trying to do in 2022. A few of my friends maybe knew what was going on, but I thought this would be a good time at the beginning of a new year to talk about the success or the failure of my task. Now, this task was to seek out 10 rejections or failures, things that I had a very low chance of actually succeeding at, but I thought I'd go ahead and try it anyway. Now you might wonder, why would I do such a thing? Well, you see, I'm what some personality psychologists would refer to as rejection sensitive. Of course, no one really likes to be rejected or to experience failures, but I have been particularly sensitive to this. I have done so much in my life to try to avoid feeling like a failure or putting myself in a situation where I might be rejected. So what I do instead is try to seek out assurances before I do something that I actually will succeed at it before I attempt it. So you can see it's sort of like a low risk sort of approach to life where I'm only going to do things where I know I have a really good chance of succeeding. It goes all the way back to, like, for instance, when I was just finishing high school and I had lots of different choices there for possibly where I could go to university, to college. And one of the places that was really interested in me was a top university that wanted me to apply to a special PhD MD program. And they were even willing to give me a scholarship. And there were some other really good schools too that I heard from around that time that said, hey, just apply to our school, you have a really good chance, we'll take you. But I didn't apply. Partly the reason was that I thought there's still a chance they're not going to want me. They're going to reject me in the end. And instead what I did was I only applied to one university, the University of Iowa, where I had been before. I'd visited it during a summer camp. And I just knew I had all the right credentials to get into the University of Iowa. It was going to be no sweat, no possibility of rejection. So I applied. That's where I went. And I lived happily ever after. I went to the University of Iowa. But you see, even back then, I was trying to look for the sure thing. I didn't want to put myself in a situation where I could possibly fail. Now, this has pretty much been the case all my career ever since. I've been in academia now since the 1980s, and I've always been careful about making sure that I would go for things that I had a high chance of winning or succeeding or not being rejected. This is a kind of a tough thing to do in academia because there is a lot of rejection in academia. Like, the number one place that we get rejected is when we submit manuscripts to journals. We worked really hard on our manuscript and we think we've done a really good job with it, and we send it off to this journal. It goes off for 3 or 4 months, and maybe the reviewers don't like it, or the editor thinks it's not appropriate to the journal. It gets rejected, or you get lots of negative criticism. You spend some time maybe revising it if you're given the chance, and it still gets rejected. I remember I went through a manuscript once where I had to go through 3 or 4 versions of it, and ultimately I got rejected, didn't get into the journal. Very frustrating. 1.5 years, 2 years of waiting for that paper to get accepted, never did. So rejection, like I say, in academia, it happens all the time. So for somebody like me being high in rejection sensitivity, I've of course had to accept a certain amount of rejection or a certain amount of chances of being rejected, but I'd done whatever I could do to minimize that feeling of rejection. I mean, this applied to everything in my life. It even applied to, like, asking people out on dates. I would never ask somebody out on a date if I didn't think for sure that they were going to say yes when I asked them out. And you could say that despite all this rejection sensitivity, I've had a modestly good career. I'm an associate professor at a prestigious university in Australia. I've done well. But I do think that my rejection sensitivity has gotten in the way of me doing even better. That I probably could be much further along in my career. I could have a much more esteemed position, for example, if I had maybe taken some more risks when I was younger. So I wanted to make this video to tell you about my journey into fighting my rejection sensitivity. And it came about because a couple years ago, I read somebody on Twitter talk about how she was going to make it her goal to go for 100 rejections that year. That is, she was an academic. she was going to go ahead and try for all the different things that we can try out for as academics, like for promotion or for an award or for some prestigious position, whatever it is. She was going to make sure that she got rejected 100 times. So she took the frame of mind, hey, these are probably things I'm not going to get. Let's see if I can actually accomplish this. Go ahead and make 100 rejections, 100 failures in the coming year. And I think that she stopped somewhere around number 10 or number 20 in terms of her attempts because she actually was succeeding. She didn't actually fail as much as she thought she was going to. And she soon realized that it was going to be very, very hard for her to actually reach the 100 rejections because sometimes she was actually successful despite the odds that she had made for herself and not getting that particular accomplishment. So I was inspired by that. I've been thinking about it for quite a while, and I decided a year ago at the beginning of 2022 that I would make it my goal to go for 10 rejections, 10 things where I believed that normally I would never apply for these things or go for them because I wouldn't have a chance, that in my modest judgment or my ridiculous judgment of myself, I didn't think I was qualified for, I wouldn't, no one would care, whatever. I just sold myself short, and so I would assume that I would get rejected. So I thought, I'm gonna go ahead and go for 10 of these things and see how I do. Can I be successful in 10 rejections or failures? So what I thought I'd do here is go through with you these 10 attempts at rejection or failure. I'll tell you what they are first, and then I'll go back through one at a time and tell you whether or not I succeeded at my rejection or failure. All right, so here are the 10 things, and they're not necessarily in chronological order, but they kind of roughly, I learned about them during the course of the year in this order, in terms of their outcomes. The first one was going up for the editorship of a major psychology journal. So the American Psychological Association is sort of a leading publisher in psychology, and one of our top journals in my field is the journal Emotion. And it was about a year ago, December, January, that I saw that they were looking for a new editor-in-chief of that journal. Very prestigious position, something that you have a lot of sway then over the field. You get to know a lot more about what's going on in the field of emotion. And although I knew I wasn't a full professor, that I wasn't somebody who was highly published in this journal, I'm not the most famous person around, I thought I'd go for it because, again, part of it was this task that I was going to go ahead and apply for something that I didn't think I had a very good chance of actually succeeding at. Also, because a friend of mine, Samin Vazir, had mentioned a few years ago that she was sort of surprised at how few people actually did apply for these editorships and fellowships and things like that, and that your chances are actually better than you think they might be. So I thought, what the heck, I'm gonna go ahead and apply for the editorship. So I had to upload my CV and all that and send it in, and then wait to see whether or not I was selected. The second thing that I went for was a partnership grant between my university, the University of Queensland, and Emory University. And I had a good friend at Emory University that I had known when I worked there 20 years ago. And I contacted him and said, hey, let's put together one of these grants of an application where you can get like $20,000, $25,000 to do a joint project between your two universities in which we could travel to each other's universities, collaborate, and develop a bigger research project. So we worked on that for a couple months, and I applied for this joint UQ Emory grant. The third thing that I went for was the chair of my university ethics committee. Now this one, I'm sure there's some people who will watch this video who are in academics and say, why would you want to be the chair of the ethics committee? I'm actually currently a chair of an ethics committee, a major one for Australia, the CSIRO Ethics Committee for Behavioral Research. And I'm very much interested in ethics and research ethics in terms of how participants are treated in studies and so on. And I thought, well, I'm the chair of this other ethics committee, this really prestigious one at my university. It would be like one of the top ethics chairs at the university that all major university research would go through. I was qualified for it, I thought, Now again, I thought that they probably would really want somebody who was a full professor and who had a little bit more fame and maybe some more grants and was more prestigious than me. So I didn't think I had the best chance, but it was in the ballpark. So I thought I'd go ahead and apply, and I did. I sent off my application for that. My fourth attempt at rejection or failure was to go up for a university teaching award. Now I've done this before. I've had other years where I applied for teaching awards at my university, just never seems to stick. The year before, in 2021, I did get a teaching award that was local to my faculty, the division of my university where psychology is housed, and now is being encouraged in early 2022 that I should apply for a major university teaching award, which would be a multi-stage process. And the first stage was that I had to apply for to be considered even as a finalist. And that meant that I had to do an expression of interest form, which I think I had to send my CV in and a 3 or 4 page statement and so on. So that was the next thing I did, is I applied for this university teaching award. Again, I was pretty pessimistic about my chances. I've applied for these awards before, just can't get them. I don't know why. And so I thought, I'm not going to get it. But again, I'm sticking to my little project here. I'm going to go for something that I don't probably have much of a chance of actually winning. Number 5 was that I saw that my society in social psychology, called the Society for Personality and Social Psychology, called for nominations for fellow status. So this is like a prestigious level, being a fellow of the society, and you could nominate yourself for this. And over the years, I've seen these calls for fellows, and I just always tell myself, hey, I'm not worthy. I'm not one of these prestigious people who could get a fellow at the SPSP. I just haven't accomplished that much. Whatever. You can see how my thought processes work in my head. But I could just, every time I saw one of these, I thought, not deserving. But here I was committed to this project in 2022 where I was going to go ahead and apply to things and try for rejection, so that I could at least say that I applied and got rejected, right? So I could chalk it up on the board of these 10 things that I attempted to be rejected for. So I applied for it. Number 6 on my list was going up for the head of school in our department. So what happened was, we have a current head of school. In some places around the world, it might be called the chair of your department. The head of school had been our head of school now for nearly 10 years, or already has been head of school for 10 years. She was finally stepping down after 2 5-year terms. And it was announced that they were looking for people to apply for this job, that they wanted somebody. They were going to open up for external applicants as well as people internally, people in our own department. And so I decided that I would seek this. I would actually go for it. And I didn't end up fully applying for this job, and I'll explain that to you a little bit later. But I will say that what I did do was attempt to go up for the head of school job, so I'm going to include it on this list. And the next thing was that the Association for Psychological Science and the International Congress for Psychological Science was looking for volunteers to help them with some of their international operations, and specifically hosting or being on the program committee for the International Congress for Psychological Science that will be held in Brussels in March of 2023. And they were looking for people to self-nominate from around the world to be on this program committee. And again, it had that kind of air to it, that they were looking for sort of prestigious people, leaders in their field, something that I would normally tell myself that I wasn't qualified for. But again, I went ahead and applied for it, sent my application in as part of this project, just to see, could I get rejected again? Number 8 was something that took a lot of time, and it's something I've done year after year, which is that I applied for a major grant from the Australian Research Council, the ARC. And the major kind of basic grant that you can get from the ARC is called a Discovery Project grant. Now, I've applied for Discovery Project grants multiple times over my time here in Australia, never ever got funded. It's so important that I've been told a number of times that I need to get a Discovery Project grant if I ever want to be promoted to full professor at the University of Queensland. So I thought, all right, gotta apply for it. I don't have much of a track record in terms of ever getting these things. I have tweaked, I've done everything I could. I've gamed the system as much as I could, trying to really come up with a good team. I've workshopped my applications. So what I did early in 2022 is I went ahead and submitted another application. This was the 3rd attempt at a particular application I had, and I sent it in to see if I would learn about my rejection once again. So there I go. That's my number 8 for the year. Now, number 9 is maybe a little bit more controversial, but I figured I had to do this. And that was that I was very unhappy with the fact that I'm stuck at the associate professor level job at my university, and also knowing that they had put this condition on that I needed to get an Australian Research Council grant in order to ever get promoted. I thought I should probably keep my eyes open for a position where I could be promoted somewhere else. And so I went ahead and applied to 3 jobs this year. And these 3 jobs were all for full professors. That would mean then that I wouldn't have to worry about getting promoted through my own university, because I would basically say bye-bye to my university and head off to one of those other universities. I'll talk more about why I did this and what my strategy was, but that meant that for the first time in many, many, many years, I had to go on the job market. I had to put together a whole package, send it off to some people I don't even know at these 3 universities, and then wait to find out whether or not I was going to get interviewed or, whatever. So again, perfect for this project, right? Another chance to be rejected. In fact, here's 3 possible rejections, but for the purposes of this video, I'll just count it as one event. And number 10 is something that's going to seem really funny because you're watching this on YouTube, but my 10th thing that I thought I'd do is launch a YouTube channel and try to make it successful. Okay, so basically launch a successful YouTube channel. Now, this might not seem like such a high-risk thing to do, but you'll soon see when I talk about this later about all the risks that I did have to go through, in the sense that there was lots of chances here for rejection, for not getting followers, not getting likes, not getting the people I wanted to interview to be on my channel. And so that's another thing that I put out there for my career, that I had made this deliberate decision that I would go ahead and try doing a YouTube channel. And again, it's another chance for failure. It might be that I don't have what it takes. I wouldn't get anybody to watch me. I'm too old, I'm too boring, whatever it is. And so I went ahead and put that down as my 10th attempt at something that could lead to rejection or failure this year. I just want to interrupt here at this moment just to say that if you like how this video is going so far, could you please consider giving me a like? It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And also maybe consider subscribing to my channel. I'm always looking for more subscribers. I'd love to have you come and see the rest of my videos. All right, so let's go back now through and find out how successful I was. Now, successful here means, did I fail? Did I get rejected? And I'll keep score for you. I'll go through them one at a time and tell you how I did. I'll tell you right now, to get to the bottom of this, that I wasn't completely successful. That is, I didn't get 10 rejections. So some of these things, actually, I failed at in the sense that I succeeded. But let's get to that. Let's just see how overall I did out of 10. All right, so let's go back now through and find out how successful I was. Now, successful here means, did I fail? Did I get rejected? And I'll keep score for you. I'll go through them one at a time and tell you how I did. I'll tell you right now, to get to the bottom of this, that I wasn't completely successful. That is, I didn't get 10 rejections. So some of these things, actually, I failed at in the sense that I succeeded. But let's get to that. Let's just see how overall I did out of 10. So let's take the first one, the editorship of emotion. I waited for that one for several months. I remember I sent my application in January or February, and I think it was probably June or July when I got a message at last saying, thank you for applying, but no, we don't want you. And at around that same time, they went ahead and announced the person who did get the editorship. And of course, that person is somebody who's very well known in their field, somebody I respect a lot. And I thought she was great. She should be the editor-in-chief. So I didn't get that one. So number one, first thing I tried, failed. Okay, so I succeeded. I got my 1 out of 1 there. Number 2 was the Emory grant. Now the Emory grant was really took some work because I had to work with this colleague at Emory, and we had to actually come up with another bunch of partners, both at our universities, people who would write commitments to say that they would be part of this project if it was funded. So my colleague at Emory contacted some of his colleagues. My colleagues here at UQ also signed on. I thought we did a really great job. We were basically proposing that we were going to combine social neuroscience with behavioral genetics in this new way that no one had really thought about before, and that would benefit both areas. But didn't get it. Didn't get funded. In the end, somewhere like in July or August, we got a simple message that said, sorry, didn't get it. No feedback. Interestingly, there was nothing that said why our particular project wasn't funded. I did look around and saw who they did fund, and they tended to fund people who had more junior researchers on their field. So I think what they were they had more junior people on their project. So I think our mistake was probably that we didn't show how we would help early career researchers as much as we might have on this particular project. The third thing was to try for the chair of the ethics committee at the University of Queensland. Now, again, I think on paper, I have everything they would need. I had even been on this committee before, the University Ethics Committee at UQ. I was currently the chair of a major ethics committee for one of the major research institutions in Australia. I thought I was more than qualified on paper, but I know that my university has a big thing about rank, and the fact that I'm only an associate professor and I wouldn't be full professor as chair of this committee, plus the fact that I just don't have a lot of pizzazz or famous stuff behind me. I mean, I think they look for somebody who kind of has some prestige or some gravitas for this kind of position, and I didn't get it. Again, no feedback, just a simple letter saying you didn't get it. I don't even know to this day who they did actually offer it to, but 3 for 3, another failure. Number 4. Going up for the University Teaching Award. Now, the University Teaching Award thing, it's annoying because, as I said to you, I had to apply for something called, I had to make an expression of interest, which is sort of like a first round of applications. So even though I've been teaching for 25 years, I have excellent teaching ratings, I had an award from the previous year, I've done all sorts of really kind of innovative things in the way I teach. These are all things that are objective. I can just tell you, I mean, I know that I feel very comfortable in what I do in terms of my teaching. I'm sure I could always improve it, and I have constantly improved my teaching over the years, but I really think that, I'm one of the better teachers around. However, my university doesn't think so. And so even though I spent all this time documenting in my expression of interest the fact that my teaching has led to more students wanting to take my course, fewer students failing in my course, all sorts of trying to find objective measures. The feedback I got on this one was, sorry, how do we know that you are the reason why more students are taking a class? How do we know that you are the reason why the failure rate has dropped? I guess they basically wanted me to have like a control group or something where I could show that this wasn't just something that happened as a function of time or whatever. Anyway, it's quite frustrating because I didn't really have any of that kind of evidence that they needed, and it's not like I can go back now in time and try to find that evidence. So there's nothing I could really do. I was given some sort of invitation I could come and meet with the person who's behind these awards and get some more personal feedback for the future. I'm done with it. Got rejected again. There's no reason to keep applying for these awards. I'm not going to get one. Number 5 was the fellowship application for the Society for Personality and Social Psychology. So the application to be a fellow. And I did send in all those materials, self-nominated. And somewhere in October or November, I got an email and it said, ta-da, congratulations, you've been elected as a fellow in the Society for Personality and Social Psychology. So yes, I have this official fellow status of this prestigious society that I'm very proud of. I really didn't think I had much of a chance. I've told myself year after year not to apply for this, but there I was, elected now as a fellow in the SPSP Society. So there's a place where I failed so far this year. Everything else, I succeeded in my failures, but now I had one where I got a win. Okay, now that head of school thing. Now, the head of school thing, like I said, it was sort of like, I didn't actually fully apply for this job, and it was more like the expression of interest phase or something. So what happened was they announced that you could go up for this job, you could apply for the head of school, but it required like a full gigantic application. I'd have to go through a lot of statements and CVs and interviews, things like that in order to get selected for the head of school. And what happened is I wasn't originally going to do it. Then I decided to do it for the sake of this exercise. I also had some colleagues who really encouraged me and said that they thought I'd be a great head of school. And finally, I was told that even though I was an associate professor and that they wanted the head of school to be a full professor, that anybody who qualified for this job would be promoted automatically to full professor. So then I realized that this isn't really an obstacle being an associate professor. So I expressed interest. I started talking to people I went and met with the dean about the job and basically found out who else was going up for the position. I wasn't too put out by the other people going up for the job. I was willing to go up for the competition, to go through this exercise. But in the end, I decided not to submit a full application. So I kind of went through that expression of interest, got rejected. And how did I get rejected? Well, I was kind of told basically that I didn't really have much of a chance. Then the reason why is because I was an associate professor. And without having a major grant, like from the Australian Research Council, there was going to be next to zilch a chance for me to get this job because I'd be going up against people who already had these major research grants, were full professors. They'd be more qualified instantly. And I just couldn't see any reason to pursue this given the fact that I was being told pretty directly that I was not going to be promoted if I did get this job. So anyway, in the end, it just turned out to be a failure for me in the sense that I really, at one time, was really excited about the opportunity, thought this would be really cool. I think I really enjoyed being head of school. I had a lot of ideas about how I thought I could make our school better over the next 5 years. But in the end, I decided not to do it. Somebody else is now going to be the head of school. Very much respect her. I think she's going to be great. But you can count that as another one of my failures. All right, so if you're keeping track, that means then of the 6 things that I've talked about so far, 5 of them I was rejected or had a failure, and 1 of them I succeeded. So I don't have a perfect track record of rejection. Did have that 1 win when it came to getting fellow status, but the other 5 things I did fail at. All right, so number 7 was to go for the program committee for the International Congress of Psychological Science, or to be part of this meeting. And somewhere in October or so, in November, I was sent an email along with like 5 other people from around the world, and I was invited to be on the program committee. And so I've succeeded again. I'm now one of the people on the program committee for the International Congress of Psychological Science. I had to spend a couple weeks at the beginning of December going through all sorts of hundreds of abstracts of all the papers that are being presented. I think I'm supposed to be involved in some symposia. I may be going to Brussels in March to be chairing some of the sessions. I think a lot of the work's going to actually happen in the next couple weeks. But regardless of what actually happens in the end, whether or not I even go to Brussels, I think it's really cool that I put my hand up and got selected for something that was quite prestigious, again, that I didn't think I really was qualified for, I wouldn't have a chance at. So again, I had success. Number 8, the ARC Discovery Project. So you remember I told you that this Discovery Project application that I submitted back in March, I think it was the 3rd time I had submitted this application. And each time I had worked on it, tweaked it, but I just always felt like it's never gonna get funded. And in fact, we got some feedback about our application in July, I think it was. It was fairly positive, but there was one person who was really negative about it. And I just thought, again, my feelings were I was gonna get it. I'm not gonna get funded this time. And I'll probably just have to give up on the whole idea of ever getting a grant on this particular topic, which has to do with robots. I was just ready to go ahead and chuck the whole idea and move on to something else. So you can imagine how surprised I was when at the end of November, they announced who got these discovery projects, and I was one of them. My team with Emily Cross and Arvid Kappas, our grant is going to be funded. And so beginning now in 2023, we have 3 years of funding to work on looking at social psychology in robots, using psychophysiology and fMRI. It's very exciting. First major grant I've had in decades. I'm quite excited about this. I've had other grants, but I wasn't the lead on the grant, and this is the first one where I'm the initiator, the lead of the grant. And I stuck through it and persevered, and I've succeeded. And as you can tell from some of my other attempts at things like going up for promotion or going up for the head of school, getting this grant is really a major thing that's going to possibly help me get promoted in the coming year. So that'll be something I apply for in 2023, and maybe by 2024 I can say to you that I am finally a full professor. So how are we doing? We're on 8 things now, and I think from what I can tell here is that of 8, 5 of them I've failed and 3 of them I've succeeded. What about number 9? Number 9 was application for a job. So as I told you, because I was getting concerned about the fact that I maybe never would get one of these discovery project grants and then would be stuck forever as an associate professor, I decided to apply for 3 other jobs that I knew about, where if I got those jobs, I could become a full professor. Now, it's really hard at my stage of career, at my age, to get a job, to move universities, because we're more expensive than a brand new PhD, an assistant professor level type person, or basically a lecturer. The rate of pay is a lot lower, right? And so as you put more time in on the clock and you get these promotions, you get paid more. So there aren't that many jobs at the highest levels of pay grade in academia. And so because of that, the chances are really slim that you're ever going to get one of those jobs. But I went ahead and applied. One of them was a job where they were again looking for someone senior in social psychology, and they needed somebody for that role. There was another university had a similar kind of thing where their senior social psychologist had left in the past year, and they were hoping to replace them. And the third job was a place where they weren't necessarily looking for a social psychologist, but they were just looking for somebody as a senior psychologist who could be a leader in their department. So I applied to all 3 of those places, had to do all of the work that's required for job applications. I only told a couple friends, a couple people about it. I didn't want to use this strategically, by the way, to just get a counteroffer. This is something that some people do, which is that if they're trying to get something at their own home university, like a promotion or better pay or something, they go ahead and apply to a job somewhere else, and then when they get the offer from the other place, they come back and say, hey, can you counteroffer this? Can you give me a promotion? This wasn't my intention. I wasn't going to apply to one of these places and then use their offer to counteroffer my job here. No, I was really willing to leave my university to go to one of those other jobs. I did hear from one of the universities, and I went through a whole process of going to the university, having a one-day visit, and I met with some top people at the university, and basically it went really, really well. And they told me that I was one of their top 2 applicants. And they asked me basically to keep going through the process, and that they would let me know in a couple of weeks if I actually was the person that they were going to select as their final choice. But I have to say that going through that process and finding out what they actually had at that university, what they would have to offer for me as a teacher, as a researcher, just wasn't what I wanted, even though it would be a promotion. Overall, the university just doesn't have the things that I have at the University of Queensland. And so in the end, I just called them up and said, sorry, take my name out of the hat. I withdraw my application here. I'm going to stay at my university. Now, partly the reason why I did that is because I got that Discovery Project grant, because I had put my hat in the ring and tried again for a grant, and this time finally succeeded after all the odds said I wouldn't get it. I felt more comfortable in the idea that I could stay here now at the University of Queensland and then go up for promotion in the coming year, and I wouldn't need to apply somewhere else to go. So if I did actually hear from those other 2 universities, I doubt very much that I would be interested in it at this point, unless they had something spectacular that would make my life a lot better to go to that university. But I think at this point, as 2023 has started, I don't think I'm going to be hearing from them, and I don't plan to go off to another university. So I'm going to consider that a success in the sense that I did actually try for something that I thought I wouldn't get rejected for. So number 10 on my list was setting up a YouTube channel. And as I mentioned before, I think some of you might not think that's much of a risk, but there was a lot of risk involved with this. You see, putting a YouTube channel out there is very public. People, my colleagues, my students, everybody can see how well I'm doing or not doing. You can see how good my videos are, how poor they are. They can see how many followers I have, how many subscribers, whether or not anybody likes it, that kind of thing. So doing something like YouTube is really a chance for a person like me who is high in rejection sensitivity to feel lots of rejection. And another thing that came was that I started this series within my YouTube channel called 21 Questions with an Academic. And you can see those here. I have actually a link there to where you can see the 21 questions with academics. But these were where I approached colleagues, people I knew in academia that I really liked. And I asked each person if they would be willing to sit down with me for 10, 15 minutes and answer these 21 questions. And I was quite nervous about this with most of the people I asked this question to, that they would actually reject me, that they would say, no, I don't want to be interviewed on your channel. And so therefore, I went through this process every single time I ask somebody if they would be my subject for this. I'm putting myself out there to see if they'll risk doing this for me. And sure enough, 3 or 4 people actually said no. They came up with good reasons why, but they didn't want to be interviewed on camera. But the rest of those people wonderfully said yes, and made my heart sing that I actually have these really good interviews, and I continue to plan to do those. And I plan to continue doing these again in the future, the coming year. So I think overall, the YouTube channel thing is a success. It's not something where I've had some rejection. I have seen my numbers of subscribers double. I'm hoping to see them keep going up in 2023. So it is something I'm proud of, something that I stuck my neck out on, and it's paying off in terms of I'm having some success with it. So if you look at my overall list then, I had 10 things that I tried to do this year to fail at in 2022, and I was successful in failing at 5 of them. So I have about a 50% failure rate or a 50% success rate, depending on how you put it. I think the lesson that I got from this, that also I saw in that other woman's attempt to do something like this a couple years ago, is that when you do actually try to put yourself out there and take things that are really risky for the chance that you might get rejected or that you might not do well at, you might surprise yourself and actually succeed, which has happened to me half the time here. Five times I was surprised that I could have sworn I wasn't going to get whatever it was that I was trying for, and I ended up getting them. So I think it's a pretty good lesson for all of you. If you're especially somebody who's really worried about rejection or failure, yeah, go for it. Just tell yourself that's what you're actually trying for, rejection or failure. That way you won't be disappointed when you get rejected or failure. I mean, you will still be disappointed, but by framing it that way, you may take more risks then and find that you actually do get yourself some much deserved award or some promotion or something that you're trying to get in life that would make you happy, and you haven't tried for it because you've always talked yourself out of it. And I hope that you like this video enough that you will give me a like and maybe even subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate that. So thanks very much.